What if the most sacred relics of history were not frozen in time, but merely paused? What if the still, ancient gaze of a deity could shift, watching the world evolve with quiet, unnerving patience? This is the unsettling question that haunted museum curator Li Wei, the keeper of the most valuable and possibly the most active artifact in the dusty regional museum of Shaanxi Province, Western China. The artifact was known simply as the Jade Bodhisattva of Mount Hua. It wasn't its size that was remarkable. It stood just under 2 feet tall, carved from a single piece of dark green jade, but its age. Radiocarbon dating placed it near the end of the Tang Dynasty, roughly 900 AD. Its most distinct feature was the posture, one hand raised in a loose abhaya mudra, the gesture of fearlessness, and the other resting gently on the knee. Curator Li, a man of rigid academic discipline and zero tolerance for superstition, first noticed the anomaly 3 months after the statue was moved into its new, reinforced glass display case. It was a Monday morning, inspection day. Li performed his usual meticulous sweep. He checked the climate control, the seismic sensors, and the 24-hour video feed loop. Everything was in order. But as he stood before the Jade Bodhisattva, something was wrong. He pulled out the archival photograph taken just last Friday. In the photograph, the Bodhisattva's left hand, the one resting on the knee, had its fingers slightly curled, pointing straight down toward the base. Now, 3 days later, the hand was distinctly tilted inward, the fingers curled tighter, resting not on the knee, but lightly touching the inner thigh. "It's impossible," Li muttered, running a gloved hand through his thinning hair. The case was hermetically sealed, sitting on a specialized pressure plate. The temperature fluctuation was negligible. No one had entered the secure wing over the weekend, yet the subtle, impossible shift was undeniable. It was like a sleeping person had merely adjusted their grip in the middle of a long dream. This was the hook, a minute, impossible movement that defied every known law of museum science. An ancient silent deity was seemingly making itself comfortable. Curator Li decided to approach the problem with scientific rigor, cataloging the strange events under the title Case File J11, Posture Variants. The second major incident happened exactly 1 week later. This time, it wasn't the hands, it was the face. The original Bodhisattva's expression was famously serene, the eyes slightly downturned, the lips barely curved in the standard benevolent smile often seen in Tang-era Buddhist art. However, when Li opened the museum on the following Monday, he immediately felt a difference. He felt watched. He positioned his camera at the exact angle used for the official catalog photo. Looking through the lens, the change was apparent. The Bodhisattva's lips were now completely flat, and the eyes, though still cast down, seemed to be focused forward, directed at the viewer. The expression had moved from serene benevolence to a look of neutral, quiet assessment. Li felt a knot tighten in his stomach. This was more than a subtle shift. This was a deliberate change in emotional valence. He tried to rationalize it. Refraction, he thought. Humidity affecting the jade's surface? He quickly checked the humidity sensor. Stable. He brought in a junior researcher, Xiao Min, without revealing his suspicion. "Look at the J11, Li instructed. What is your primary emotional reading of the expression? Xiao Min squinted. "It's beautiful, but a little cold, sir. It looks like it's waiting for something, like it's listening intently." The change was consensus. The statue had adopted a listening posture. Li theorized, jotting down notes in his official log. Hypothesis 2, subtle thermal expansion of crystalline structure, unlikely to cause shift in emotional expression. The scientific explanations were failing, giving way to an uncomfortable, ancient truth about objects that hold centuries of belief.
The changing posture and expression were disturbing, but they could still, theoretically, be dismissed as perceptual tricks or psychological phenomena influenced by fatigue and suggestion. The next observation was purely physical, and it sealed the fate of Curator Li's skepticism. He placed an almost imperceptible ring of fine, powdered white chalk around the entire base of the statue, pressed right up against the jade's foundation. The chalk was so fine that a mere shift of a millimeter would leave a noticeable disturbance. This was his final, verifiable test. On the third week, Li entered the secure wing, his heart thumping. He rushed to the display case and knelt down, shining a flashlight beam onto the chalk line. The line on the left side, the side of the Bodhisattva's resting hand, was perfectly intact, but the line on the right side, the side of the Abhaya Mudra hand, was broken. Not scattered, not smeared, but broken with a tiny, hair-thin gap exactly where the base of the statue had been resting. The statue had pivoted, a minute rotation of perhaps half a degree in the direction of the gap. Li felt a wave of dizzying nausea. This wasn't refraction or thermal expansion. Something weighing hundreds of pounds, sealed behind thick glass, had moved itself just enough to break a line of chalk. He remembered a local legend he had dismissed as folk nonsense. When the Bodhisattva turns to the west, it is searching for the source of the whispers. The statue had pivoted slightly westward toward the deep, remote mountain ranges of Qinghai and Tibet. The implication was clear. The statue wasn't just adjusting, it was searching, and whatever it was searching for, it required a physical effort that manifested in an impossible pivot.
Curator Li stopped trying to find a scientific explanation. Instead, he started researching the history of the statue, digging through scrolls and dusty regional temple records. He discovered that the Jade Bodhisattva had never been in a temple. It had always been kept in the private collection of a single, powerful family named the Zhu. And the Zhu family records contained a recurring motif: the whispers. The family believed the statue was a listener, a spirit catcher. They claimed the jade was porous to sound, absorbing the prayers, the pleas, and the dying thoughts of every person who passed near it over the centuries. They claimed that in the deepest quiet, the statue would occasionally release these accumulated sounds. Li Wei, now fully immersed in the paranormal, set up a specialized microphone inside the case, shielded from external noise, and linked it to a recorder. For 5 nights, he recorded nothing but silence. Then, on the 6th night, at 3:30 a.m., the hour of the highest quiet, the recording captured it. It wasn't the keening of the Shanghai Bridge, but a chaotic, faint mumble of voices. They were soft, overlapping, and utterly unintelligible. Hundreds of whispered pleas and laments compressed into a single low sonic cloud. Li couldn't make out a single word, but the sheer number of voices was terrifying. It sounded like a massive, silent crowd praying in a language long forgotten. He sat in the dark control room, listening to the jade statue whisper the history of the world back to itself. He realized the statue wasn't moving to be comfortable. It was moving because the sheer weight of these absorbed secrets was causing a physical, kinetic reaction. It was flexing its spiritual muscles.
Curator Li Wei never publicly acknowledged the truth of case file J11. He officially filed the movements under microseismic activity in the display case's foundation. But every morning, before the museum opened, he would check the statue. He noticed that the Bodhisattva's expression was now constantly shifting between the flat, assessing look and a look of deep, ancient tiredness, the corners of the jade mouth slightly downturned, as if burdened by the weight of the endless whispers. He also noticed that the movement stopped when the museum was open and filled with the chatter and footfalls of the living. The statue only moved, only listened when it was alone, in the dead silence of the night. The Jade Bodhisattva of Mount Hua still sits in the museum in Shanxi. It still draws hundreds of visitors who marvel at its ancient beauty. But the true question remains, locked in the mind of the curator and whispered only in the dark. Was the statue moving because an ancient spirit was trapped within, struggling to break free? Or was the movement a natural physical manifestation of accumulated faith, the kinetic energy of thousands of years of human belief finally causing the stone to stir? We see the statue as art, but perhaps it is a living receptacle, a silent recorder that moves only when the whispers of the past become too loud to bear. The movement may have stopped for now, but as long as we keep seeking answers, as long as we keep telling the story, the Jade Bodhisattva will continue its slow, imperceptible turn toward the west, listening for the next whisper to arrive.